One of my favorite ways to learn is by listening to the questions of other people. And so this week in the podcast, I'm answering some of the most common and uncommon questions from listeners just like you. This is Gene Monterastelli, and welcome to the Tapping Q&A podcast recorded live to tape from Williamsburg in Brooklyn. This is episode 606, originally aired April 10th, 2024. Hi, everyone. I hope this finds you well wherever you are and whatever time of day you're getting a chance to listen to this. Thanks for spending a little time with me today. Now, one of my favorite parts of my Authentic Action Academy is something that I call office hours. And they happen 5 times a month. And basically what happens is everybody who is in the program gets an opportunity to jump on Zoom and just ask questions about stuff we've covered in class, ask questions about how they can get more out of their tapping, or they show up with tapping requests. And it's a beautiful give and take because it's an opportunity for me to just meet people exactly where they are. But my favorite part about it is everything that happens in the chat box as it's going on, because people are getting insight and learning from the questions other people are asking. People are getting a chance to tap along based on someone else's issue. And when we have the opportunity to hear what someone else is thinking, it gives us the ability to reframe the content, reframe our own struggle, reframe our own learning. And so back in March, what I did is I did one of those office hours outside of the program. It was free. Anybody could show up. We did it on Zoom and I recorded it. And so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to share with you a number of the questions and tapping requests from that so you get an opportunity to learn along with the people who were on the line on that day in March. Now, if you are new to tapping and you have no idea what I'm talking about, tapping is one of my favorite tools to create transformation. I use it daily for myself. I use it with my clients all of the time. All you need to do is follow the arrow in the upper right-hand corner. That will take you to learntotap.com and it'll give you all of the basics. So when we get into the tapping in this particular episode, you're going to be able to tap along with us. One final note before we jump in, you will notice as we enter into this, it's a Zoom recording with 2 talking heads on the screen. I have blurred out the face of the person I am talking to. Now, when we did the recording and we did this live, everybody knew that I was going to be recording it and it might be shared with the world in something like this. But just to make sure that I'm protecting the people I'm working with, that's the reason why their faces are blurred out. So enjoy a few of the questions and tap-alongs from last March Ask Me Anything/office hours. Hey, Brad.
Hey. So I put the thing into the chat. There are basically 2 aspects to this thing I'm dealing with. One is I don't believe I will ever be successful in creating significant income from my business ventures. And then I'm torn and frustrated and mad at myself for trying to be successful when I don't believe I ever will be. And what you just said about the grief, there's obviously some connection there in terms of I can't have nice things, and so I don't believe I'll ever have nice things again.
Yeah. So do this for me. Take a nice big deep breath. And I want you to tune into that I have never had nice things and I'll never have nice things again. And as you tune into that, ask that sensation, what proof does it have that that's true?
There have been several things which have been very important to me when I was a teenager that were sitting on my shelf, and my mom came in and cleaned the room, and she knocked a one-of-a-kind Boy Scout mug, summer camp mug, off of the top shelf, and it shattered. She put it back in pieces and left me a note that says, oops, and that was it. And then after screaming at her and telling her never to come into my room again and clean, she did it a second time with a wooden box that I had created and spent months creating, and she knocked it onto the floor and broke it as well.
Yeah.
So
this right. Tip top head and just move from point to point. Yeah. Tap with me. And I'd encourage everybody here to join along with us. I recognize the fact. There have been things.
In
my life. Which were super valuable.
To me.
That were then lost. And they were lost in such a way. That it felt as if No one else took it seriously,
No one else took it seriously,
especially people who were really important to me.
especially people who were really important.
And because I have that story,
And because I have that story,
there is a part of me
there is a part of me
that believes that
that believes that
if I ever say something is valuable,
if I ever say something is valuable or get attached
it
to
is
something,
going to be taken away
it's going to be taken away
and destroyed
and destroyed
without any care or concern.
without any care of concern.
And I also recognize the fact
And I also recognize the fact
I've had lots of valuable things in my life
I've had lots of valuable things in my life
that stayed in my life
that stayed in my life
as long as I wanted them to stay in my life.
as long as I wanted them to stay in my life.
But because my subconscious mind
But because my subconscious mind
has a negativity bias,
has a negativity bias,
I am going to remember
I'm going to remember
all of the things that went wrong.
all of the things that went wrong.
And the reason why my subconscious mind does this
And the reason why my subconscious mind does this
is to keep me on guard
is to keep me on guard
so I can learn the lessons
so I can learn the lessons,
from my past experiences.
past experiences.
And I give myself permission to know
And I give myself permission to know
I have actually had
I have actually had
good things in my life
good things in my life
that have stayed in my life.
that have stayed in my life.
And so it is possible for me
And so it is possible for me
to be thoughtful and deliberate
to be thoughtful and deliberate
as I am recognizing
as I am recognizing
things that I want to do are valuable.
things that I want to do are valuable.
And so I want to be thoughtful about them,
And so I want to be thoughtful about them,
but I also want to remember
but I also want to remember
just because they're valuable,
just because they're valuable,
they don't always go away,
they don't always go away.
even though
Even though
that is what my subconscious mind often thinks.
that is what my subconscious mind often thinks.
Nice deep breath. Okay, first pass through, what do you notice?
The losses are, I think I can say always, related to someone who is very valuable to me doing something on purpose that ends up destroying things and or me and my connection. My ex-wife, a decade-long affair with my best friend,
Yep.
and our third child being his, not mine.
Yep. Tip top of the head, move from point to point. I recognize the fact.
I recognize the fact
It is really hard
it is really hard
to trust
to trust,
because when we trust,
because when we trust,
we are giving people
we are giving people
access to
access to
our soft underbelly.
our soft underbelly.
They are seeing past
They are seeing past
all of our shields and protections.
all of our shields and protections.
And I give myself permission to know
And I give myself permission to know
it is possible
it is possible
to recognize the fact
to recognize the fact
there are degrees of trust.
there are degrees of trust.
It's not an all or nothing proposition.
It's not an all or nothing proposition.
And there are actually people in my life
And there are actually people in my life
who I can trust.
who I can trust.
And I also recognize the fact
And I recognize the fact
I don't have to trust them with everything
I don't have to trust them with everything.
all the time.
And
And so I give myself permission
so I give myself permission
to recognize
to recognize
that trusting more
that trusting more
does not mean
does not mean
I am thoughtless.
I am thoughtless,
I am careless.
I am careless,
I am reckless.
I am reckless.
And I give myself permission
And I give myself permission
to be gentle with myself.
to be gentle with myself.
as I recognize that fact.
As I recognize that.
Nice deep breath. Can you stretch, move a little bit? Okay, what do you notice now?
Um, there's some anger and frustration around, I guess it's believing I can trust people to anything more than a very small degree.
Yeah. And so this would be the homework I would encourage you to do in leaning into this. Is what I would use is I would use the tip of the tip of the spear that I'm going into is this idea of trust and this idea of trust. And what's going to happen is, start with our sod statements that we use all the time. It's not safe for me to trust because, okay. Right. And then what it's going to do is it's going to bring the memory up, which is then going to bring the anger up, which is then going to give you something contained to go after. And then you're going to go back to trust. The other thing I would do in engaging with this idea of trust is I would engage with it on the macro level and I would engage with it on the micro level. And what I mean by that is it's not safe for me to trust others because, right. Or it's not safe for me to trust offering my services to someone because. So there is the kind of like global issue of trust because of history. And then there is the contextual issue of trust and looking at both of those things, because again, going back to where we started in some of our conversations, the goal for me is to change and act in a new way. And so even if you're in let's say, for example, as we're dealing with this as your trust, it is possible for you to trust enough to share your work with someone where you still might not be in the place to trust someone enough to be in a romantic relationship with them. Right. Like, even though the trust stories are similar, or I might not trust you with a valuable thing, like the valuable things you talked about that were broken, but I can trust you with an idea of mine, because like there's different with me, like me trusting you with my time, me trusting you with my words, me trusting you with my ideas, me trusting you with my wallet. You're like all of me trusting you with keys to my house, me trusting you with my passwords, like all of those things exist in different ways. Like of the folks that work for me in my business, there are people who have access to some of my passwords. There are people who don't. There are people who have access to my credit card's number, and there are people on my team who don't. Like those things, like we get a chance to set that up in different ways as we engage with that. And so like give yourself permission to just think trust in general, but also think context. I want to take this thing, and just if this is this big, one of the primary issues that's existing, every single time you're going to do something new, look at it through the lens of trust, and just go, okay, oftentimes I'm going to hold myself back with, if it involves another human, it involves trust. Right. So just and again, as we're thinking about coming and chipping away at this big issue from all of these different angles, someone I hired to do my taxes, someone I'm inviting over for dinner, someone I want to work with. We get an opportunity to bump into trust in lots of different ways, and we're going to slowly undermine that. And again, take more action, not take all of the action, not trust everywhere. Right. The other thing, and we tapped on this, is I would keep reinforcing, just because I'm trusting, I'm not thoughtless. Just because I'm trusting, I'm not careless. Just because I'm trusting, I'm not reckless. And intellectually, that, but most of the phrases I'm saying out loud have nothing to do with my conscious understanding of what is going on. It has everything to do with my subconscious understanding of what is going on. And because I know my subconscious mind has very extreme black and white thinking, if I'm presenting to my subconscious mind, I want to trust more, my subconscious mind goes, there's all of these circumstances I can't trust. And this is what, it assumes I'm going to be overly trusting and naive. Right. And so when I'm caveating, I'm trusting, but I'm not doing this. I'm trusting, I'm not doing this. I'm trusting, I'm not doing this, is about slowly getting my subconscious mind the ability to lower its guard enough for me to engage with the thing that is next. Got it. Like I'm actually working on an email before we got on here that I'm sending out. And in the email, I was telling the story about, one of my clients who sent me the email and said, I made 3 phone calls today. Like that was this huge moment of the world becoming safer for her, that her life changed because she could make a phone call. Now, that's not trusting the world with everything, but that's trusting I can safely engage with someone and interrupt their day by calling them when they answer the phone.
Right.
And so recognizing the value of being able to do a little more, because I'm trusting that circumstance. I'm trusting that person. I'm trusting that context.
Right. Thank you.
Make sense? Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi, Lisa.
Morning. Or it's probably not morning for you anymore. It's morning.
It's all good.
So I'm struggling with emotional eating. And I have in the past, I've done a course with Brittany Watkins, and I don't know if it's my subconscious mind kind of trying to protect the eating habit or what, but I feel like the things that I've done with her don't apply to this situation. It feels like it's less, I know it's still emotional eating, but it's more boredom eating.
Yeah.
I'm bored, so I sit there and I start thinking, I like something salty. And then I find it very difficult to not go get something salty to eat or sweet or what,
Yeah.
It's less about a specific food.
Yeah.
And more just kind of like I'm sitting there, I'm kind of bored, I'm watching a show or something, and then I can't resist going to get something to eat.
So do this for me. Take a nice big deep breath. And I know you don't know the answer to this, but just first thing that pops into your mind, complete this sentence. It's unsafe for me to be bored because.
Mm-hmm. It's unsafe for me to be bored because I won't be successful. That doesn't make sense, but.
Yeah. And ask that part, what proof does it have that if I am bored, I will be unsuccessful?
Proof does it have? I'm bored. If I'm bored, it must mean I'm lazy and not doing things that I should be doing.
Awesome. And it's not awesome that you're experiencing that. It's awesome that you found that. Tap with me, tippy top of the head, move from point to point. I recognize the fact. Success is equated to action.
My success is equated to action.
And taking the right action.
And
if I am feeling bored. It's because. I am not taking action. And if I am not taking action. Then I am not going to be successful. And my subconscious mind. Doesn't want me to recognize. That I am not taking action. And therefore not being successful. And so it decides. I should take an action. It just happens to choose an action. That has nothing to do with. Me being successful. Instead, what it does. It is just distracting me from the fact. That I'm not actually taking useful action. And I give myself permission to know. I am allowed to do things. That are unproductive. I don't have to be working towards my goal. Every moment of every day. But I do recognize the fact. There is a part of me. That wants me to be doing more. And I give myself permission to know. It is okay for me.
It is okay for me.
And it is safe for me
And it is safe for me
to take action.
to take action.
Nice deep breath. Stretch and move a little bit for me. Okay, and I want you to tune back into that sense of being bored. And once again, just complete the sentence. It's not safe for me to be bored because.
It's not safe for me to be bored because. I'm being lazy.
Yeah. Complete the sentence. I'm not allowed to be bored because.
I'm not allowed to be bored because. What came to mind was my grandpa and the work ethic, and you have to be hard.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Tippy top of the head, move from point to point. I recognize the fact.
I recognize the fact.
I have been enculturated
I have been enculturated
to be a hard worker.
to be a hard worker.
And I was given the stories
And I was given the stories
of being a hard worker
of being a hard worker
as a moral way to live,
as a moral way to live,
as the right way to live.
as the right way to live.
And the adults in my life gave me that
And the adults in my life gave me that.
story because they wanted me to be successful.
They gave me that story because they wanted me to be successful.
They just did not realize
They just didn't realize
they were giving me an absolute,
that they were giving me an absolute,
that I needed to be a hard worker
that I needed to be a hard worker
every moment of the day.
every moment of the day.
And anything that was not hard work
And anything that was not hard work
was actually a moral failing,
was actually a moral failing,
a statement on who I am in this world.
a statement on who I am in this world.
And I give myself permission to know,
And I give myself permission to know,
being a committed, dedicated worker
being a committed, dedicated worker
towards my goals
towards my goals
and creating a better life
and creating a better life
is not a value judgment on me as a human.
is not a value judgment on me as a human.
It is actually healthy
It is actually healthy
not to be constantly working.
not to be constantly working.
It is actually healthy
It is actually healthy
to be doing a little of nothing sometimes.
to be doing a little of nothing sometimes.
And so I give myself permission to know
And so I give myself permission to know
I am allowed
I am allowed
to put down these stories
to put down these stories
that say I must be a hard worker all the time,
that say I must be a hard worker all the time.
and that say the only way
The only way
that I can be a good human
that I can be a good human
is if I'm super productive.
is if I'm super productive.
Those might have been
Those might have been
useful stories somewhere along the way,
a useful story somewhere along the way.
but just because they were a useful story
But just because they were a useful story
doesn't mean it is a useful story now.
doesn't mean that it is a useful story now.
And at some point in the future,
And at some point in the future,
if I want to pick the story up again,
if I want to pick the story up again,
I can pick this story up again.
I can pick the story up again.
Nice deep breath. Okay, what do you notice now?
A lot of sadness came up.
Yeah. Sad about what? That's the sadness. What does it feel disconnected from? What does it feel is lost?
Um, I feel like it's lost a lot of time when it could have been having fun.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Tippy top of the head, move from point to point. I recognize the fact.
Recognize the fact.
This demand to be working
This demand to be working
has taken a lot of time and energy.
has taken a lot of time and energy.
And the sadness that I'm feeling
And the sadness that I'm feeling
is about that missed time.
is about that missed time.
It's about that missed opportunity.
It's about the missed opportunity.
And I give myself permission to know
And I give myself permission to know
it is appropriate to grieve lost time.
it is appropriate to grieve lost time.
And the sadness that I'm feeling
And the sadness that I'm feeling.
is just pointing to that lost time.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Is just pointing to that lost time.
Is just pointing to that lost time.
And just because
And just because
I have lost time in the past
I have lost time in the past
does not mean I have to lose it in the future.
doesn't mean that I have to lose it in the future.
And I give myself permission to know
I give myself permission to know
I'm allowed to have fun
I'm allowed to have fun
and not work all the time.
and not work all the time.
It is safe for me to have fun.
It is safe for me to have fun.
It is safe for me not to work all the time.
It is safe for me to not work all the time.
I deserve to have a good time.
I deserve to have a good time.
I am worthy of having a good time.
I am worthy of having a good time.
And I give myself permission
And I give myself permission
to start to create
to start to create
the habit of having a good time more.
the habit of having a good time.
Nice deep breath. Okay, what do you notice now?
A sense of calmness settled in during that tapping round.
Good.
Thank you, Jean.
Yeah. And let's just take a step back and let's kind of talk about kind of structurally what we did there. So you started with I am acting this way. I am eating something I don't want to be doing. So you'll notice the question we asked, we didn't tap on emotional eating. We
Right.
tapped on what the problem the emotional eating was trying to solve. And you were able to identify the problem it was trying to solve because the question we asked was boredom. And so I'm trying to escape this thing. And so the question was, why is it not safe and why am I not allowed to feel this thing? And so you can see how we then use that to find our way to, oh, I should be working really, really hard. I'm not working really, really hard. I need to distract myself from that sense that story that's running in the background all the time.
Yeah.
Does it make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
The other thing that you might consider doing, just as a side note, because you mentioned it wasn't a specific food, but every single time you talked about it as salty food.
Mhm.
And so it is possible that the food is actually salt. And you're just because you're not going to be just like taking table salt and pouring it into your mouth. What you're
Right.
doing is you are trying to find a salt delivery system. And because of the way, modern Western food is, there's lots and lots and lots of salt delivery systems easily at hand. And so if it is something that is consistently like that, because one of the reasons why we reach for certain foods is because if we have a substance sensitivity to that food, the body has to fight off that substance sensitivity. So we don't feel the sadness, the overwhelm, the grief, the depression, the whatever is going on in there. It's almost like I have a glass of water and I have 2 drops of red food coloring in it, which is the boredom. So I'm going to take 37 drops of blue and put it in there so I no longer see the red. When you ingest something that your system doesn't want, there's a biochemical response where the system is flooding the system with all of this stuff to protect you from this thing that it thinks is dangerous. So it's not the salt, but it's the body's response to that salt that is the blue food coloring that is covering up the few drops of red food coloring.
Okay.
So as you're just kind of poking around with that like just if you're in a circumstance where it's an emotional eating thing, and I think you identified it right, it was about a particular emotion, but if we find it in a particular vein where it's not just whatever is at hand, but it's, oh, it's this particular slice of whatever is hand, there might be some useful information in that as well.
Thank you.
Awesome. Good stuff. I like to think about it like a bunch of necklaces that are tied together, like are in a knot. Like, which necklace do you start with? I don't know, like the piece that's going to move first. And sometimes I'm moving necklace, like I'm moving the platinum necklace and it's coming. And then all of a sudden I can't move the platinum necklace anymore. Therefore I need to move to the silver necklace, and I'm fighting with silver, and then I move to the gold one. And so it's not like this linear thing. I do the platinum one, then I go to the gold. Like it's literally like when you're given a ball of that, you start tugging, like you just, where's the movement going to be? And so now we have another entry point where we can, again, what's the leading edge in this moment? Like, I'm always just kind of like, I love that. For me, I like that question a lot because it's not requiring me to figure out where the entry point is. Because in this moment, it might be the grief, or in this moment, it might be the bad thing that happened in the past. In the moment, it might be this particular relationship. Like, because it's not, again, like my resource state, what happened to me today? What was like, I'm about to have a call with you, and I am listening to my playlist from 1987, which is when I was 13 years old, which means the leading edge of my emotions are going to be very much impacted by who I was and what I was struggling with when I was 13, versus getting on the call with you. And I walk down the hallway and I'm looking at all the pictures of my family on the wall before we have the call. Like the thing that happened right before the thing that happened in the last 72 hours might determine what the leading edge is and where the entry point is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay. Make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you very much.
Awesome.
First of all, I wanted to thank everybody that's actually asked questions and stuff, because all of it seems to benefit me.
Absolutely. And that's the reason we'll talk about that in a moment, but that's the reason why we do this in a group, is there's so much value in hearing other people's experiences.
Yes. But my question is, okay, clients that I've dealt with and myself, when you're tapping, and I've always been told, stay with the negative until it goes down, to a 2 or a 3.
Yeah.
That doesn't always work. Some people stay at whatever they're at, 9, 10, they stay there.
Yeah.
Okay. And I've found, even with myself in the beginning, that I could tap forever on that same thing, and you're not coming up with different feelings.
Yeah.
Okay. You could stay there forever. And it's like, okay, they're not dropping. And I eventually had to do it with my clients before I noticed it with me too.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're still staying at the same level. There's no other things coming up. Okay. And I'd have to, how do you say, almost like choices, insert something in there for them to actually break the cycle.
Yep. Yeah. So there's a couple of things. So the first is there's 3 responses that we can have to a round of tapping. Okay. Response number 1 is the intensity diminishes. We're on the right path. Response number 2 is the intensity actually increases. And this is just because I'm tuning into what is going on. I'm sure you've been in a circumstance where you're like telling the story about this horrible thing that happened. And at the beginning of the story, you're frustrated. And by the end of the story, you're angry, because as you're recounting you can just like feel yourself revving up again. Sometimes it happens when we're tapping because we're tuning more into it or getting more details. Sometimes nothing changes. The feedback for me when nothing changes, it's telling me I need to try something different. And it could be there's a reversal, or we need to take another approach. If nothing is moving, like this, the definition of insanity is doing the exact same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So anytime I plateau, that is not the tools failing. That is not, this isn't working. That is, I just need to try something else.
Yeah. Well,
and so for me, one of the things that I find, and I don't, this is dispositional. This is descriptive. This is not prescriptive. I do not prescribe to the idea that I don't go to the positive until I get something to it too, because I can oftentimes find negative things that aren't obvious until I say the positive, because the subconscious mind will not abide something it does not believe. So if I say, I'm going to lose 30 pounds, my subconscious mind, if it doesn't believe that, goes, No, you're not. You failed before, you're going to fail again. So I didn't say the negative thing, but by saying the positive thing, I found the negative thing that I'm tapping on. So if I'm going, I'm going to lose 30 pounds, my system goes, no, I'm not. Well, I happen to be tapping while that thought is coming up. And again, the idea is we tune into the issue, and it doesn't matter how I tune into the issue. I can imagine a vision. I can say negative things. I can say positive things. I can say lots of things, and it's going to tune me in. And so when I find myself plateaued in a way, then I go like, great, what do you want instead? Say the opposite of that thing, because sometimes what happens is that the loop that we're caught in is a particular word. So for example, a lot of the work that I'm doing right now, for me, there is a huge difference between worthy and deserve. Now, that's not for everybody, but there is a huge difference for me between those two things. And they might feel like synonyms, you know, where it's like, I am let down. Well, what happens if I change that to I felt betrayed? Now, I might not have come up with the word betrayed, but if the word betrayed all of a sudden gets, oh yeah, that's exactly what it is. And so for me, anytime I plateau, I'm just going to start poking around the edges. The other thing that I pre-frame with my clients all the time is this idea of just because I'm having you tap on something doesn't mean that I believe it or I want you to believe it. What we're doing is we're just poking around to see what's going on. And so when I plateau, I might even reframe it with a client in that particular moment, go, okay, we've reached a plateau, which means we just need to enter into this a different way. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to try and walk in through a whole bunch of different doors and let's just see what lands. Are you willing to trust me if we just kind of poke around the edges and see what we can find? And so then I get their confirmation. And so when I get their consent to do that, then we poke and we poke and we poke and we poke and we poke. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, we found a new thing. Oh, this is what's going on, you know?
Yeah.
You know,
well, like I said,
the other, yeah.
In not being able to bring someone down, quite often I've tried that and that doesn't work either. But it's like I said, it's almost like the choices message. Maybe I could look at this differently. Maybe I can see something else in it. And just saying those words sometimes brings out more.
And so for me is I'm open to the possibilities, the phrase that I use, and I say something else, or I give myself permission to, you know, or tap on the fact that we're stuck. I recognize the fact right now I'm stuck inside of the process, and it's frustrating to be tapping on something and not to be moving over. It's the emotion about the issue. Like there's now an emotion about the fact that we've reached an impasse. And the more angry and agitated I'm about the impasse, the less energy and resource I have to get past the impasse.
Yeah, I do that with myself.
You know, and so I do that with clients as well. I give myself permission to, and like one of my favorite tapping phrases ever is, I give myself permission to recognize this as a process, and I give myself permission to be frustrated with the fact that this is always a damn process. Like I tap on that all the time, which gives me permission to live in both worlds. And it gives a little chuckle, just like you did there. It takes a little of the energy out of it. But it also, because sometimes like allowing something to be a process means I'm being content with not moving forward. Mm-hmm. And by saying both of those things, I'm saying, I want this change to happen in the way that's natural. And I also have a desire to get out of this pain right now. And by articulating both of those things, then the frustration diminishes a little bit. Yes. You know, like when I do that with a client, consciously or subconsciously, they're going, oh, Jean understands the fact that I'm really frustrated with what is going on. I am in a safe space with someone who trusts me, or I am in a safe place with someone I can trust because they understand me. Yes. You know, I am consciously giving voice to something they are subconsciously believing, then they may not even be aware that it's there. And by doing that, like, they'll just relax into the process a little bit with the little chuckle that comes with that. Does that make sense as an approach?
Yes, it does. And that's basically what I've done. So thank you.
Good stuff. Great. So I hope you enjoyed that conversation. I hope you enjoyed that back and forth. I hope you enjoyed the tapping and learned something. If you'd like to be in a circumstance 5 times a month where you get a chance to jump on Zoom with me and ask any question that you want about tapping, have your tapping requests heard, or learn from other people around you, I'd really, really encourage you to join the Authentic Action Academy. It is a program that is designed to help you use tapping and other tools to create an authentic life that you love. love. All you need to do is go to tappingqanda.com/AMA. That's tappingqanda.com/AMA for Ask Me Anything to get the full details to sign up. If you got any questions, drop me an email at support@tappingqanda.com. As you look at the screen right now, you will see a whole bunch of other amazing videos, trainings, ways that you can learn. Click on that, and I look forward to talking with you and tapping with you again real soon.